A very good evening to you, and we would like to welcome you to a very special discussion. Today's discussion revolves around a very important topic, which is the Thripitakaya. The Thripitakaya has been declared as a national heritage. So, we would like to talk about what the Thripitakaya is and why it has been declared as a national heritage. We have two very special guests in the studios, and I take pleasure in welcoming Venerable Polpiti Mukalani Panyasiri There into the studios. He's a former lecturer, the principal of Sili Vimalasiri English Dhamma School, Asokaramaya Polpiti Mukalana, and we also have Professor Chandima Vijay Bandara, former Vice Chancellor of the Sri Jayawardhanapura University. A very good evening to you.
Good evening.
And first and foremost, Venerable Sir, we would like to get to know about what the Thripitakaya is in a layman's point of view.
May the Triple Gem bless you. Namo Buddhaya. Honor to the Supreme Buddha. Our Professor Chandima Vijay Bandara, former Vice Chancellor, and Ms. Sharifa. So I am pleasure in participating in this historical discussion because after a long time government, because during the royal period that we have observed these things, but after a long time the present government, especially with the instruction of His Excellency Maithripala Sirisena, has taken a very kind of magnanimous decision to declare the Thripitakaya as a national heritage. Therefore, first and foremost, as lay people, especially your question is that we all know, as Buddhist monks, we have a kind of knowledge regarding what is this Thripitakaya, but our lay people do not have that much of knowledge regarding Thripitakaya. Therefore, it is better to know what Thripitakaya is. Now, Supreme Buddha, or Buddha, having completed 10 perfections, attained enlightenment under the Bodhi tree 2600 years ago. After that, he preached Dhamma, the doctrine. Now, that doctrine itself is called Thripitakaya. That Thripitakaya, as a taste, it has a one taste. That is kind of, we call it taste of Nibbana, right? As it can be divided into two as Dhamma and Vinaya. Dhamma is doctrine, Vinaya is discipline. And also it can be divided into three, like discourses and discipline and Abhidhamma. And also metaphysical aspect. And also it can be divided into 5 aspects, namely according to the way discourses are selected. For example, discourses are generally separated. Mainly some discourses are very lengthy ones. So, Digha Nikaya, long discourses, and Majjhima Nikaya, middle length discourses. Then Anguttara Nikaya, miscellaneous discourses. And there are Sanyutta Nikaya, compound discourses. And Kuddaka Nikaya, some other texts. So, these are the 5 parts that we can divide Thripitakaya. And also, Thripitakaya can be divided into 9 sections also. It is called Navanga Sastru Sasana, in Sinhala we call it. So, that means Sutta. Sutta means discourses. Then Geya. Geya means the discourses with some stanzas. So, the Supreme Buddha explicates some kind of lesson, and finally he summarizes with the stanza, with the gatha. So, it is called Geya. Then Veyyakarana. Veyyakarana means expositions. Like there are some discourses like Dhammacakka Pavattana discourse, that is the first discourse. The turning of the wheel, the first discourse. And also another discourse that we have such a Vibhanga discourse, how the Four Noble Truths have been explicated. And so Vayyakarana. Then there are Gatha. Gatha means some discourses based on stanzas, like Ratana Sutta, and people know very well Ratana Sutta. And Udana. Udana means joyful utterances, like the Buddha having attained enlightenment, he uttered the utterance called Aneka Jati Sansaran, like that is those things. Then Udana, Itivuttaka. There are some discourses, they are based on explanations, like this is wholesome things, this is unwholesome things, like that. Then Abhuta Dhamma, those are some wonderful things. For example, there are occasions that Prince Siddhartha was born. He for the first time, he having born as a baby, he walked and 7 lotus flowers bloomed. Now these things are there in the discourses, like Acharya Abhuta discourse in the middle lane discourses. Then finally Vedalla, question and answers. So generally this can be called Thripitakaya.
Right, and I'm sure the Thripitakaya has a massive history behind it. So Professor, do you want to comment on it?
Well, yes, actually Thripitakaya has a massive history, as you say, because immediately after Buddha's Parinibbana, the monks wanted to preserve it. Preserve it means Buddha always insisted that his teaching should not be distorted. There's something that he really didn't like is that, right? So he didn't mind people coming and questioning, arguing, getting into dialogue and all these things, he didn't mind. But he was very upset when people distort him. Even sometimes when he found some monks who were not really, grasping the essence of his teachings, when some monks misreported him, then he used to summon them and say, Ma Tathagatang Abbhachikkata, that we don't overstate my things, right? Don't exaggerate, don't overstate, and don't distort, right? He really wanted it to be in pure and pristine form, as he said, because it's his philosophy. After a lot of effort, he understood this philosophy, and so he wanted it to be in pure and pristine form. So knowing that, Venerable Mahakashyapa, one of the great followers of the Buddha, right, arranged to have a council immediately after his Parinibbana, 3 months after that, and arranged a council where all Buddha's teachings, those were scattered here and there, right, as he was discoursing these things to different individuals. These things are collected, collated, and arranged into texts, right, and then they were divided into different groups of monks who were called reciters, right. They used to recite it every evening or whenever they have free time. They recite and they transfer it to the next generation. Like that, for several generations it was transferred in oral way. And but after some time, then the venerables themselves felt that this is not really a safe system, especially when it was happened in Sri Lanka. There was a drought, and then there were no food and everything, and monks were suffering. So monks decided, in a situation like this, it's always better to have them documented in book form. So they had a council in Sri Lanka, and thereafter the Thripitakaya was actually preserved in pure form. And in Theravada countries like Burma and Thailand, the way that Sri Lankans preserved it was actually accepted as the standard form, and so there was a standard Thripitakaya. But unfortunately, immediately after the Buddha's Parinibbana, some Brahmin monks, because most of the monks that Buddha had were actually 70%, according to some Indian scholars who studied Thripitakaya and collected the names and found the percentage. It's about 70% were Brahmin monks, and the Brahmin monks kept on asking the Buddha whether it is possible for them to translate the Buddha's discourses into Sanskrit language, which is the language of Veda. and so they could be sort of monopolize it as their own, right. Buddha didn't like that. Buddha said, I don't approve that. Wherever people like to study it, let them study in their own languages.
Sakaya Niruttya.
Sakaya Niruttya, their own language. But the problem was that after Buddha's Parinibbana, after some time, they translated without the Buddha's permission to Sanskrit. And then the door was open for different people to give different interpretations, and then even sometimes they were interpolating certain sutras into existing Tripitaka. So Theravadins, who were very careful about preserving it in the proper form, did not accept that. They kept on continuing to have Tripitaka in Pali, and so we in Sri Lanka got the Pali Tripitaka, which is the Theravada Tripitaka, and we continued it in that Pali form. And other Theravada countries like Burma and Thailand and some other countries as well, they also had the Pali Tripitaka. So we were having it without any trouble, and only now we have some problem. Yeah, one thing is that all throughout this history, Theravada Buddhists had the support from the government, right. Whenever the king of the country supported Theravada monks, they had courage, they had confidence in preserving Tripitaka in its form, right. So that much is for history.
That much of history for the Thripitakaya, but since we're on the topic of Thripitakaya and we spoke of the history and we made the general public understand what the Thripitakaya is, Venerable Sir, would you like to elaborate on how beneficial is the Thripitakaya to the general public?
Yes, I mean that is the I think main target and aspiration, because now Dhamma, the doctrine of the Supreme Buddha, is there for us to use it, make use of it, and especially practice it. Now Tripitaka can be, generally the Dhamma, we call it Paryapti, Pratipatti and Prativeda. Paryapti is what Buddha expounded. Pratipatti is practice. Now that is practice. Prativeda is comprehension. So in order to comprehend this Dhamma, we have to practice it. So if there is no the Dhamma, the sutras or Vinaya, so these things are not available, people do not know what Buddha has expounded. As our professor correctly mentioned, our Arahat, especially the great disciples, they took the great decision in order to continue this correct Dhamma. Now especially I think I have to add, Professor, that they wanted to translate into Sanskrit, especially this Mahayanist one. Now after the second Buddhist council, they really wanted to, that Mahayana tradition itself is itself made some damage to, they wanted to do something against the Supreme Buddha's original teachings. But the main thing is the Arahants, the great disciples, they did not allow it. They preserved it with the Pali language. So we have no doubts about the Buddha's original teachings are hitherto available. Now what we are preserving, launching as national heritage is what Buddha has originally taught. Therefore, there were so many councils. Now first council he mentioned, now second Buddhist council was for some of the group of monks wanted to have some, they want to release or they want to ease some of the Vinaya. Now the original monks, our Arahants, did not want to allow them. Therefore, the second Buddhist council took place. As Professor mentioned, now royal patronage was very important. There Kalasoka, King Kalasoka at that time, after 100 years of the passing away of the Buddha, took necessary steps to preserve Dhamma, giving patronage for the monks to, there were some Arahants called Sabbakami, Yasa, Revata and those Arahants. So they took the, first place to take, take steps to preserve Dhamma by holding the second Buddhist council. After some time, the third Buddhist council was held after 235 years later, especially during the Emperor Asoka period, under the guidance of Venerable Moggali Puttathissa Arahants. So, because of that, we got this what is called pure Dhamma, pristine Dhamma, sublime Dhamma to Sri Lanka, because his son Arahat Mahinda Thera arrived in Sri Lanka 2300 years back with the Pali Tripitaka. We received it by the time king was King Devanampiyathissa. So, from that day onwards, we were using this Tripitaka, and from that day onwards we could generally come to what is called become who are going to three refuges, Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha. Now, having listened to Dhamma, people became Buddhists. Buddhist means they take refuge in the Buddha, take refuge in the Dhamma, take refuge in the Sangha. Now, that is how one becomes a kind of Buddhist, or we call Upasaka, now like that. Then he can practice this Dhamma. Now, 5 precepts. For lay people, it is a great thing. Now, if somebody practice 5 precepts, means it is a universal thing. Now, Buddhism, according to my understanding, it is very, very important for everybody in the world, especially even for fauna and flora, and environmentally, according to every way, every aspect, Buddhism is valuable doctrine, because it doesn't harm anybody, any being in the world, any any creature in the world. That is why it is very, very important. So, this Dhamma, now if you practice what is called 5 precepts, not to kill animals, not to steal things, not to engage in sexual misconduct, not to tell lies, not to take liquor. Now, if you are following these 5 things, that means you are supporting the society, right? Now, people can live peacefully. Therefore, this practice, Dhamma, practicing Dhamma, on the one hand, this is mundane. On the other hand, this is supramundane. Now, mundane level, there are so many discourses for mundane level. Now, for example, blessings, the discourse called Mangala Sutta, Asevanacha Balana, not to associate bad friends, associate the wise. So, like that. So, in that way, mundanely, supramundanely, this is very, very important. People can use this for day-to-day life to live a peaceful, pleasurable kind of life. On the other hand, they can go forward and put an end to this suffering. So, that is why important.
So, those are the benefits of the Thripitakaya to the general public. And Professor, I would like to ask you, since we spoke of how universal this is, how is the Thripitakaya used in the West?
Well, actually, Thripitakaya was introduced to West about 2-3 centuries ago, and they were really fascinated with it, because they found that it was logical. Buddha's teachings are logical and scientific, and therefore they studied Thripitakaya very systematically, especially the people who came to East for some other purposes, for instance to annex different Buddhist states to their empires. When they were asked to be rulers of these areas, they thought it is easier for them to rule if they know the culture and religion of the people. So, they studied Buddhism and they were really fascinated with it, and they went back to their own lands and they started promoting Thripitakaya. So, in England they formed Pali Text Society. Pali Text Society carefully edited Thripitakaya into sort of Roman scriptures. So, they have Romanized Thripitakaya now as a standard version for Westerners to do research in Buddhism. it is actually very similar to the Thripitakaya that we have preserved in Sri Lanka, Burma and Thailand. There is no any distortion done by Westerners. They actually found certain things very helpful their life. For instance, they were really fascinated by Buddhist meditation, and therefore they started practicing meditation in even in their universities. Now in America they have courses, university courses.
The
to
mindfulness.
teach mindfulness. They call it mindfulness, right? And so Buddhism is being very much used by Westerners for several purposes. One is for studying the philosophy, and other one is for practicing it, as Venerable suggested, that that it will be very much enlightening for them. Thirdly, to just
be a better human
to be a better human being, right? Because there are some universal principles, even if you take them out of Buddhism and try to practice it, even then it is very useful. There is no need to sort of always say that this is Buddha's rules, because they are so universal, right? And for them to sort of enrich the Western philosophy. In the Western philosophy, there were certain areas which were to be actually perfected with some Eastern thought. Therefore, Buddhism they found very interesting, very enriching for their kind of thinking. So, like that, the Westerners really liked it, and there are so many places now in the West, universities, temples, schools, and they study Buddhism.
And the government has decided to declare Thripitakaya as a national heritage. Why did this come up, Venerable Sir?
Yeah, I think on the one hand, this is a kind of responsibility of the government. Now, according to the constitution also, it is mentioned that protection of Buddhism is a responsibility. On the other hand, I tend to think as our kings, our historical kings, they were doing this from the very beginning. Now, Emperor Asoka, after that, King Devanampiyatis, and King Uttiya, and King Mahanaga, King Yatalatissa, King Gotabaya, King Kavantissa, King Gaminiyabhaya, King Saddhatis, and all these kings, they were doing this. And following the same path, the present our president has taken that step on the one hand. And why now? As Professor hinted earlier on, that some monks on the one hand, the Buddha himself has expounded, one day this doctrine will be destroyed by the ones who enter the sasana. So now that is being now that has happened now. Now most probably some monks not having some proper teachers, not having robed properly, they want to interpret according to their own ways. Now distortion, properly distortion, and some misinterpretations. For example, Paticca Samuppada is a universal teaching of the Buddha. Now dependent origination. They sometimes coin words, pati icca, like that they coin. So they are doing, kind of damage. Now we cannot explain the damage that they do to our Supreme Buddha's teachings. Therefore, making this kind of, heritage, national heritage, now I think nobody can damage this, distort, interpolate things. So that is why I think this is very, very kind of magnificent decision taken by the government this time.
And Professor, finally, do you wish to add to that and also speak about the benefits of making this a national heritage?
Of course, this is a right decision, timely and very vital decision that government has taken to declare it as a national asset, because Sri Lanka's major religion is Buddhism and we have been preserving it for a very long time. And now there is as Venerable said, it's a big threat to this. Big threat to this means from inside, it's not from outside, inside threat. That means they are distorting the text and giving fanciful etymologies, right? They are giving wrong etymology. They don't. The problem is that the people who are now taking the prominent role in explaining Buddhism to common people are not really educated in Buddhism. They really don't know what Pali language is. Without knowing Pali, they provide fanciful etymologies to Pali terms, and they, with the support of such wrong etymologies, they reshape certain Buddhist concepts to give the very opposite of what the Buddha meant, right? Therefore, this is a very big threat, and they will keep on doing this, and there are so many people who are ignorant. They are supporting this by providing money and providing publicity, and starting centers for teaching this wrong message. Therefore, in Sri Lanka, this is a very big threat for Buddhism. Therefore, it is timely intervention by the government to declare that it is a national asset, because formally in Sri Lanka, in many other countries, there were attempts by state to standardize Thripitakaya. So, we like to have, as any other religion, all religions have scriptures, holy scriptures. So, Buddhist holy scripture is Thripitakaya. We cannot allow anybody to distort it, because if they want to say something different, it is allowed. This is a democratic country. Anybody can start a new religion, right? No need to touch Buddhism for that. Therefore, it is rightly government has intervened. President Maithripala Sirisena is now taking the stand to introduce this new program to declare it as a national asset and to prevent anybody touching it for distorting or misinterpreting.
Thank you so much, Professor. Thank you very much, Venerable Sir, for enlightening us on what the Thripitakaya is. This certainly is a very significant historical event as well. With that, it's time for us to conclude our special discussion. Have a pleasant evening.